is. Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Okay, here we go. I would like to introduce to you Rob Colburn. I would say this. You may have read his stuff, Believers in the Stern. You may have seen him. You may have somehow witnessed him in racing or such, or coaching in terms of, especially in terms of coxswains. The term Renaissance man comes to me. He was just telling me how he learned Turkish to coxswain Turkish boat at the 100. Okay, as soon as he started telling me the word Renaissance man, so I'm going to turn this over to Rob Colburn. Rob, welcome.
Thank you. Most of the emails and questions I get about coaching coxswains tend to fall into those two categories, and so I'm going to hope that today's talk will go over ways to getting the most out of your coxswains to move the boat, and so you can coach your rowers effectively. These are the qualities we tend to look for. I think most coaches would look for at St. Andrews. And the main thing is we're not so much concerned about how much they know when they start. It's how focused they are, how badly they want it, and do they seem to be able to get it when it's explained to them. These are the skills we tend to look for, fairly basic. The main thing is we want them to be able to handle the boat, run the practices, so that we can concentrate on coaching the rowers. Invest our time there. This is what we say their role is, and we tell them that safety is job 1 through 10, that they're the main safety officer of the boat, and that's their primary responsibility. Learning to steer, learning to race comes after that. Different coaches obviously have different expectations. We're very big on trying to explain to the coxswain ahead of time what their role for the season is, and trying to explain each practice so they're not having to think about it on the water. That a lot of time can be wasted on the water, and also if a coxswain is doing their job, they should be pretty busy. Even the boat seems to be just sitting there, they should be worrying about wind, wave conditions, what's going on the boat. And so when you're trying to explain a complicated drill to them, often they don't get it because they're having to focus on what's going on the flight deck. And it's not because they're stupid, it's because they've got other priorities. So it's easier to do it on land. There are certain crucial things that we think are good to tell them. If you don't tell them anything else, these are the things. Steering with one hand only as opposed to two hands tends to clear out the whole oversteering problem. And I always tell my coxswains 2 fingers of the hand opposite the stroke support. Either right-handed or left-handed. That's not so important. Usually in high school boats the oar handle doesn't come quite that far, but just to keep it out of the way. And then race calls, rating where they are on the course and where the other boats are on the course. If they don't tell their crews anything else, those are the important things. The motivation, the race calls, all that stuff comes afterwards. That's kind of gravy. This is always it depends on the coach, it depends on the coxswain. It's always a debate. How much do you tell them? How much do you not tell them? You don't want to confuse them. You don't want to overcharge them. However, when you don't tell them enough, bad things happen. So we tend to err on the side of explaining more than we think they need, particularly because even if the coxswain that we're explaining to may know it, it may help the other ones on the team who might not be bold enough to raise their hand to ask. It might help them get it. And we've probably all had experience as a coach. We explain something very clearly, succinctly, hand goes up in acknowledgement, and then something awful happens. We often use one coxswain as a demonstrator for all the rest, so it doesn't seem like we're singling one out on the water. We think that's important. The same way you would for a rower. You'd say so-and-so take a few strokes or do something. Everybody else watch too. And we do that the same way. Getting the cox and the coach on the same page. Knowing each other's handwriting so that you don't have to explain everything, waste time doing that. Very important. And We do a lot of sideways talk, mentioning things, dropping hints, because the really good coxswains are parsing every word you say as a coach. What did coach mean when he said that, and so forth. So when you drop a few hints, the good ones will pick up on it and realize, oh, that's what he's looking for. And so I'm always mentioning, always telling stories, you know. Yeah, I once knew a coxswain who was really good at doing such and such, really good at calling the drills, or used to do it this way, and so forth. The really good coxswains pick up and say, oh, okay, that's how I should be doing it too. And a little bit of that goes a long way, you find. Taking them in launch is always really valuable. Take the novice coxswains in the launch so they can watch the experienced ones handling the boat, see what the boat looks like from the side. Works very well. And also, if I'm in the launch with coxswains in the launch, it gives me very good opportunities to point out what the other coxswains are doing in the shell and explain why I like that or why I don't like that. And they get a feeling of, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's what Coach wanted when he said keeping the boats together. Because a novice coxswain is very frightening having a boat next to you, because your number one thing is you don't want to hit the other boat. And so taking them out and showing them the varsity coxswains, where they're almost blade to blade, and say, that's what I mean by together. They're like, oh, that's what you meant. Like, no, not 100 yards apart. So those things work very well, and again, you can drop the hints, you can drop the sideways learning into it, and they pick up on that very, very well. Positive reinforcement works for just about everyone, and it's the same with coxswains. Letting them know. You notice that they made a change, just the way you'd say to a rower, yes, you're getting your hands away faster. Telling the coxswain that they've made a good change, that you like that, will keep them progressing on that path. And we periodically ask them, what did you learn this week? Or what was the most important thing you felt you improved this week? So that they're conscious of what they're learning, so that they're coxing consciously and aware that every practice they're supposed to be working on some skill, just as we're drilling skills with the rowers, we're drilling skills with the coxswain. And this helps a lot, focusing them and making them progress. And this is what we are aiming for, situational coxing. Coxswains who know the procedures, who will follow the procedures, but who are able to understand the underlying reasons so that they're capable of adapting to the changes, because, as you said, race day, anything can happen. There's always some new variable, and we need our coxswains to be able to adapt to that instead of saying, well, coach, you said you always do such and such. Well, no, that was the one time that we didn't want you to. And we've been pretty happy with our coxswains being able to do this, that they really can adapt and that they can be opportunistic during a race. They can seize on something that happens during a race and make that the thing that changes how the results come on that particular day. And in the end, I would argue that coaching a coxswain is really not that different from coaching a rower. Obviously, it's a different skill, but you really train them the same way, you progress the same way with them. And that's what you're hoping to do. And that if you do it well, then everybody is on the same page. So that's my outline, and I'd be happy to talk questions with anybody.